Welcome to Syntropic World. I hope to take you on an adventure of possibility about a world that is syntropic, where all we do as humans in universe leaves everything better. Thank you to my wonderful guests, people I admire, people who make me better. Special thanks to Foundation Nova Diem for producing this series. If you are a social enterprise seeking an avenue for digital storytelling, I cannot recommend Nova Diem enough. Now let's get started. Thank you for listening. So I am thrilled that our guest today is Sarah Scott. Sarah is from Tanzania, and Sarah has been a beloved part of the Syntropic community from, I think very early days, probably 2020. And I know Sarah's bio speaks for itself, but Kilimanjaro project really working on the environment, restoring trees, ecology, the environment to enable a future for our Earth and all her creatures. And so the purpose of today's conversation is really to talk to somebody who has taken the syntropic principles and applied them in many different ways over a period of time and had learnings, good and bad, as we do with any application. And so, Sarah, thank you so much for making the time to be here and to share your work and journey. Perhaps maybe you can say a little bit about what you're currently working on now, and then we can talk a little bit about how you've applied the syntropic principles to the work that you're doing.
Great. Thank you, Christine. Yeah, it's an honor to be here. Anything syntropic definitely gets me out of bed. I was up at about 6 a.m. this morning. And where to start? I think what is really interesting for me was starting the Kilimanjaro project 7 years ago. That was already a start of a transformational journey. And the 7 years that we've been going have really been transformational, learning from nature, being humbled by nature. And it was like such a delight in 2020 to discover Syntropic Enterprise, because one of the things that I saw was that the things that I had been learning just intuitively by building this project with nature and for nature were actually syntropic principles. They were the laws of nature. But I could see that there were real gaps. And I've spent these last 3 years as a syntropic practitioner kind of filling in those gaps with the tools that Syntropy and Syntropic Enterprise has provided and given structure to, already like stuff that was already resonating within and how I wanted to build the Kilimanjaro project. And maybe just more elaborately, the Kilimanjaro project is like our aim is to accelerate and scale biodiversity and ecosystem restoration in partnership with communities for a more just, green and beautiful world. And I think that partnership comes through like, how do we build these partnerships? How do we build partnerships with our donors? How do we build partnerships with our communities and stakeholders on the ground? And I've learned a lot about that in the last couple of years.
Beautiful. And so it is this really strong intersection, a relational dynamic between nature and humans and communities. That's really the piece that I'm getting around the work that you're doing. And I've been very blessed to have worked with your team, not unfortunately in Tanzania, but virtually, and met the team and so on. And so can you just tell me a little bit about some of your experiences with application of some of the syntropic tools and how that has helped and or hindered and or, what you've learned from those experiences?
Very much. So I'll start with the synergy audits because it is my favorite. This idea of the 6 questions, are actually 12. What do you have the capacity, willingness, and desire to bring to the enterprise or to the partnership? And what do you expect in return? With the various domains of, do you have money to bring? Do you have some physical objects to bring to the enterprise? What are your skill sets? So this has been a very powerful tool. And maybe to say where I kind of failed in the beginning is that, I've always believed in partnerships. I'm super enthusiastic. I think that, that energy pays off and rubs off on people, that people are really open to want to help and volunteer with the Kilimanjaro project. But I failed to communicate clearly when those types of partnerships in whatever sphere, whether it was a volunteer or someone giving something of their time, to really ask, for this giving, what do you want to receive? And so unbeknownst to me, I was actually extractive and exploiting other people's kindness and generosity without really clearly being able to provide to them what they needed. So the synergy audit has given me a real tool, and I don't always use it as a written tool, like please fill out this form. But in partnerships, I talk to partners going into it. What are your expectations? What can you bring? Where are the skill sets? So that's been really powerful. I think an anecdote very recently. So we were part of a biodiversity accelerator, actually one of Africa's first biodiversity accelerators at the African Leadership University. And it's a consortium of partners that have come together to help our project and one other from across the whole continent to develop a biodiversity framework. So there's immense amounts of knowledge pool in this group of people. And of course they have expectations. They put this consortium together. But one of the partners in particular goes beyond the call of duty. They're called AXIM. They're really helping us connect to investors. And the other day, I just felt really compelled to sit with them and say, what is in this for you guys? Like, what is your motivation? What are your drivers here? What are your short-term expectations from us? I know that you're obligated through the consortium to provide this help, but going forward beyond this, what are your expectations? And it was such a clarifying, and I think they felt really respected by the question. They didn't need anything from us. They really believe in what we're doing and they want to support, but they didn't need anything, but I think really respected and felt thankful for the question. And I'm also using the tool.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, Christina.
Yeah, I just in reference
to.
I'm sorry
for that. Go for it.
Yeah. So
you go. I think we had a delay there.
Yeah, I'll come back to some of the other tools, but I just wanted to speak a little bit about the synergistic audit, because it is a profoundly rich tool that enables, or practice actually, it's more a practice really, that enables us to be in a deep, respectful exchange with others and also Earth and so on. And this, where the sort of the ground of being is to not exploit, to not extract, to not use and abuse. Yeah. And so because some people, like you mentioned in that partnership, they don't necessarily need what we expect back from them. They're not looking, that's not what they're holding. They're holding something else. And when we presence that for them, it deepens the quality of the relationship. And
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I imagine a world where we really do sit across from each other in pretty much all exchanges and ensure that there is a deep honoring of the reciprocity, and in different ways. It doesn't have to look like in a particular way. It can look in any particular way. So that's a fantastic example. You were going to raise another one? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's also really recognizing it. So give voice to it. Don't assume. Yes. Don't assume that you know. Don't assume that they know. Yeah. Like when you give voice to it, I think it also then creates a space for dialogue, because if then your partner is feeling that there is like a lack of reciprocity in one area of your partnership, they feel free to bring that up. They feel free to bring it to the table because you've already established the groundwork of this is a reciprocal relationship of flow. I don't always want to say give and take, but I think of flow is the right word to use there.
Yeah. And it also changes. I mean, all relational dynamics change. So this is not a static conversation or dialogue or exchange. This is an ongoing. This is a check-in. How are we going? Are we meeting your expectations? Are you getting what you need or not? And how do we recalibrate that? And so it assumes that the relationship is a dynamic.
Absolutely. I think I'd love to share another anecdote with one of my favorite partners, which is an organization called TIST. They're a smallholder tree planting organization that's connecting around 200,000 smallholder farmers to the global carbon markets. They've been at it for more than 20 years, and they decided to open up their model for other organizations. It's called designing something called TIS DIY. And we were selected as one of the projects. And this has been such a beautiful evolution of what a partnership could look like. We didn't get into the weeds of getting a solid contract signed before starting. We said, where are we going? And we saw that we were going in exactly the same direction. Okay, how can we support one another? What do they need in terms of exploring what are the principles of TIST and how they would apply? Oops.
We've stalled, Sarah. Hello.
I think if we just wait,
Okay.
she'll come back and we'll edit this piece.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, it's been touch and go quite often because I've done a lot of work with Sarah. So it's quite often been no problem at all, but she's just got bumped again.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
We'll work around it. I'll just need to make a note of where we need. Yeah. Okay. Looking forward to seeing the framework for the series. Have you written some preamble?
Yes. Yeah, Jane. Yeah, I have. Yeah.
That's all right. I'm back. Sorry, I'll just, sorry guys.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll just, I'm sure we can edit this.
Yeah. Can you perhaps go back to answering that question or making
the story. Yeah. So TIST. So I think one of my favorite partnerships is with an organization called TIST. It's a small farmer tree growing initiative that's been connecting smallholder farmers to the global carbon markets for more than 20 years. And about 2 years ago, they decided to open up their model to share kind of the core principles of TIST with other organizations to piggyback and learn from them. And it was a very brave thing to do, actually, because obviously they believe in action over perfection. So they didn't always get it right, but they really wanted to share their learning. So we've been in a co-creation process with them for more than 2 years. And when we set out, there wasn't like, getting into the weeds and nitty gritty of signed contract. And what if you do get funding for using the TIST model? What percentage goes to TIST? There was none of, we just said, let this partnership evolve and see where we go with it. And it has led to incredible creativity. So one of the things that we saw with their model was that most of the farmers were planting exotic tree species. And our model and our kind of ethos is indigenous tree growth and incentivizing that with smallholder farmers. And so we said to them, could we help think through how do we bring a biodiversity and agroforestry lens to your program? And they got really excited about it. And then they said to us, actually, we have some funding to give you if you would help us with that, because we have finance. That's not a problem for us, but we're low on human resource. And for us, we are high on human resource, but low on financing. And so they ended up funding us to design this onboarding kind of strategy that we'll be testing out this year. Yeah. So and it's just super dynamic. We check in. We're constantly asking where we are with one another. And I think that really opens up those communications channels because it's built on trust and faith and headed in the same direction.
That is really another really beautiful example. So, as I mentioned, I've worked with your team, and there are some other sort of areas in the sort of like the core tenets of a Syntropic Enterprise. Can you speak about how some of this work, introducing it to your team on the ground and so on? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yes, it was. I know my team watch me. They listen to the language I use. And of course, there's cultural differences. So I think that there's two things that come up for me in terms of what the team have learned. I saw them have, just to say that I did see them have like these penny drop moments. And one of them was around provisioning. So some of my team have been with Kilimanjaro project right from the start, actually quite a number of them. And so they've seen, we've been through the ringer together, and sometimes in times of, where we didn't have any cash flow, and I would be sharing my last $100 with the team and say, okay, who needs what. Okay, you've got the biggest need. So, and so we've been through a lot together, but always we have had enough. The provisioning and the finance has arrived. I look back at the data entry points and I just don't stress about finance anymore, because I just know that there's provisioning, and my team also trusts that now. I had to go to them this week, actually 2 weeks ago, and say, guys, this has not happened for a long time, but we're in a funding gap, and we may not make salaries this month. That's a really hard conversation to have with your team. And everyone was really calm about it. And guess what? This week, we just got a $10,000 investment that will come through on Monday, and everyone's salaries will be paid. And this is just, it's deeply humbling. And there's such a deep trust in the process. And I can see my team get it. And then when you can put language to it and you can talk about it, I think it becomes that much more powerful and resonating within. So yeah, I would say that's one. And the other one is clean communications. So this culturally is not the most easiest thing, I would say, for Tanzanians. Tanzanians have a very kind of not a straight line. If they want to say something directly, there's, you hold back. It's also, they really believe in hierarchy. And whilst there is hierarchy, it doesn't mean that you cannot speak to hierarchy or speak up to hierarchy. And so I've had to try to break some of these cultural barriers or parameters down to say, no, guys, in this organization, you are able to speak up to someone who's above you and say, this is not working. And we've had a huge challenge this year. I know, Christine, you worked with my team, but one of my team members, the COO, we've had to let go of, terminate his contract. And basically it was around some of these issues. The abuse of power was so extraordinary that the team, I think, really felt empowered during the Syntropic process, that it took them a little bit of time, but they eventually came to me and said, this is what's going on behind closed doors. And so often people are silent, but learning about clear communications and having that confidence to speak the truth, I think has also really resonated with my team.
Mm. No, that's a great example. And so just a little bit of sort of like background on provisioning. The way that we provision in the Syntropic world is we use a sort of model of the Silk Road, the camels going to the Silk Road. And so when a merchant back in the day of the Silk Road would load their camels, and they wouldn't load their camels with everything that they needed for the entire journey. They would load their camels with everything they need for the next stage of the journey to get them so they could reprovision. Mm-hmm. And because clearly they couldn't load their camels with everything they need for the whole journey. And part of that provisioning includes provisioning for the camels and the merchants on the journey. And so it's this provisioning for the next step, and really honoring that when we get to the next step, the world has generally changed. Things have changed. Mm-hmm. So you don't, if we do traditional finance, you're provisioning maybe for the next 2 years. Quite often there is an incredible amount of wastage. You spend money on things that end up not being used appropriately because everything has changed. And there's a whole lot of other things that go with that. So clearly a Syntropic type of provisioning is a form of a huge trust. But it's also, when we use the synergistic audit as well, from a Syntropic provisioning point of view, what we do is we're having a look at what we have already around us, the abundance, which includes networks, community, things. It's looking at the world through a whole lens of what we have in abundance already and what we're missing. And every time I've worked with anyone around the provisioning, that it's really, their project is deeply aligned and powerful, provisioning always happens. And you're an example of that, Sarah. It happens often in the nick of time, but it always happens.
It does. I think I just had a penny drop moment. I've just started an investor roadshow for our pilot, for our carbon project. And, investors normally want to see, and a carbon project is 40 years long. So how do you project 40 years of financing, And so what we're proposing in kind of a newer model, I know it's a little bit out there with what they call results-based financing, but we're looking at it as milestone-based financing. It's like, we're not asking you to give us the full 24 million. What we need to do this pilot implementation is 2 million. And that 2 million is then going to unlock the next step. So let's take it in stages, because then it allows you to be more agile and adaptive. And then you're not stuck and bookended by these like expectations of this program design that doesn't allow room for movement and flow and breath. I can just like, it's a living, projects they're not static either. They're not bookended by a start and end date, or they have been in the past, but they shouldn't be. It's like, how do we design for 150 years? That is a process, right? So that like 7th generational principles, I often ask my team, how do we look at that? And I think this agility and this flow. So it's not looking too far down the line. You are looking down the line, but it's what is needed today. And every step reveals the next step.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you can hold that incredible intention around your purpose, and which can manifest in many different ways. I mean, if we hold life as sacred as a sort of profound purpose behind Syntropic World, all of life, no exceptions, all of life is sacred, then the form that manifests in 150 years is, we don't know. We don't know. But all we can respond to is what we need to do in this next period of time to move in that direction. And that's kind of one of the principles behind provisioning is you take the next step, you're deeply attuned to what the next step is, and then the step after that will reveal itself, as will generally how you're going to get there, the mechanism and the mode of transport and so on. So it's a deep partnering with the emergent field as we build the thing towards the purpose that we love. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think there's also a challenge in this provisioning piece to investors, for example. We need to change what provisioning is. Provisioning is enough for everyone, for all stakeholders involved. It is abundance, not scarcity. It's not because I bring in all the money that I need to get most of the, the risk reward. I'm bringing in the money, therefore I need to get most of the return. We have to, this mindset has to shift, especially when we start to talk about investing in nature. So I think nature's a teacher, and Syntropic demonstrates that in such beautiful ways and gives language to it. But nature is in many ways at the moment being turned into a commodity. So what kind of models are we going to design that it's not exploitative like it has been in the past, but rather really transformational for everyone? I recently was in an investor kind of like practice pitch, and we had some big global players in the room, and I just spoke the truth, Christine. I just, I said, if you take too much, you create the biggest risk to the project's success, because it's extractive. And when you're in a relationship dynamic where one party takes too much, the relationship crumbles and then everyone loses. So it's like a marriage. And so I spoke this. It just like this voice just came up within me. And one of our partners that's been running a due diligence on us, he was in the room, the Zoom room. And afterwards he just said, Sarah, you don't have to respond, but I just want to commend you for speaking truth to power. Investors need to start knowing this, and there has to be pushback. And so he just, really, commended me and encouraged me. So it really fueled my flame for this narrative and driving this narrative in the work that we're doing.
Yeah, that's a beautiful response, because what you're saying really is that we are nature for a start, which we forget a lot of the times. And so if we exploit from nature, if we exploit from the nature that we're holding out there, the tree, the field, the river, the ocean, the land, if we exploit, then we're exploiting from ourselves at some point. Well, that is a given. I often use the metaphor of from the Lion King, the movie, where Scar takes dominion of the Lion Kingdom and enables all of the hyenas to eat everything. And then nothing's left for anyone. And, so it's not just putting nature, it's not just giving nature rights and putting nature on the balance sheet. It's ensuring that there is a relational dynamic where nature is honored as we would honor the most precious, important elements of anything that we do. It's without it, humans don't exist. And it's sort of going to the investor piece. I really love that, because if people just want to make a huge return on investment, then the type of enterprise that you're doing, the type of enterprise I do, is not for them. This is not about profit. Should be processional. It should be a side effect of the great things that people are doing, what we're giving back to versus what we're taking from. And that's the gorgeous reciprocity, which is, comes out in the synergistic audit as well.
Yeah. And it becomes a very quick filter, because with investors, there's just a few questions you have to ask, and then you recognize whether you're on the same page or not. Yes. And I think if there's one thing, I may not be able to change their minds, and that's okay, because there'll be other investors, like-minded investors, value-aligned investors, where we can develop a thriving relationship. But I won't willingly choose to go in an exploitive relationship, because also I'm also negotiating on behalf of communities, of smallholder farmers. I'm helping them build business models. These are not business models for Kilimanjaro project. These are for our main important stakeholders. So there's a high level integrity needed there, because sometimes the money looks flashy, but when you just look a little bit further down the road, you recognize this is exploitative, and exploitative relationships fail. And they fail the planets, they fail each other, and we don't want to fail on this.
Yeah. And they also increase the power differential, which is perpetuating poverty and lack of privilege, lack of access, a world that is not functioning because people aren't given the opportunities and so on. So it perpetuates that whole thing. I don't think people realize that if we really want a world to work, it's not just we need to be the change, looking at Gandhi's quote. Everything we do needs to demonstrate the world that we want to see. So to take extractive or exploitative capital because you need the money has a price. And the price may not be something that is in any way aligned to the purpose that you set out to create.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Nice. So you mentioned clean communication, and you mentioned the cultural differences and so on, which is something that we haven't really worked very much with. But I would imagine that sort of behind that piece of cultural difference is creating an environment where it's safe for people to actually speak, and it's safe for people to speak about their concerns or what's going on, or feeling like they've not been seen or witnessed or heard or valued or whatever it is, and really creating that environment where there is that high degree of safety to speak up, where their voices will be respected and heard in that sort of frame. So have you noticed more of that? Is it moving towards that? I imagine to change that type of cultural thing would take some time.
Yeah. I think that we've had a bit of a ground with needing to terminate the contract with our COO. So it was around sexual harassment, abuse of power, and misappropriation of company funds. And for a while, the team was silent. But when the seal was broken and one of my colleagues came forward and told me about the sexual harassment, it almost like unleashed this like community kind of team uprising, and they all shared their stories. And I just asked them, flabbergasted, like, why did you not come to me beforehand? You know what they said? And it was really harrowing. They said, we didn't think that you could do anything. We thought that you needed this person so much in the organization. So that was a real opportunity for me to really reflect on, like, how am I showing up to my team that they didn't feel that I could make the change? Then they saw me act. Once these allegations came in, taking the necessary steps, you know, it's quite complex here in Tanzania. And seeing now the colleagues have all seen the tremendous loss to the organization, particularly financially. It set us back around 9 months. And I think this has really landed on all of them. I've had one-on-one conversations with them, and they said, we recognize now why we need systems in the organization. We recognize now why we need to speak up. So I think these pennies, they've had these penny drop moments, and the rooster has come to roost, and they've seen now. And sometimes, you know, you can learn through words and through, you know, study or a coaching session, but when it really happens in real life, but there's much to be thankful for. And I think that's the other thing that everyone looks at, is that we've all learned some really critical lessons.
Yeah.
And luckily we learned them before we've got big investment coming in. I think the timing of things, luckily these were exposed before kind of the next stage of our enterprise. So there is stuff to be grateful for, an immense amount to learn, but it took actually experiencing it for the team to really take hold of it and recognize the importance of speaking up and speaking the truth.
Yeah. So you're saying that through this incredibly challenging situation, there was a clear demonstration of the power of clean communication and the ability, once that had sort of burst, for the team to recognize that they could speak safely about it, and that you were going to demonstrate your leadership in how you responded to that reinforced a safety and the opportunity for clean communication to become a normal operation or move in that direction. Yeah. Very, very.
Yeah, it's a beautiful summary.
Yeah, exactly. Very nice. So I was going to ask you about yourself as a leader, because I've known you for a while now. And so would you like, in the Syntropic world, we speak about leadership as stewardship. And distinction, it's a very clear distinction to a hierarchical form of leadership. It's not that we don't have a need at times to be a hierarchical leader. So, for example, when you've got a rogue actor, you can become the boss, but that should be the exception. In steward leadership, it's more creating an environment where people can be their brilliant best selves, and how to do that. So do you have any thoughts or reflections about your journey as a leader over these last couple of years, Sarah, as a steward leader?
Yeah, steward leader. It's so funny. I actually had put some notes in front of me, and I was like, don't forget to talk about stewardship and steward leadership. So that's great. Well, I think really understanding stewardship is interesting. It's a very nurturing role for me. And I think it's also really being very clear on your purpose first. So I am absolutely unwavering in knowing why I am on this planet and what I need to do. So kind of we say evolutionary purpose is partnerships for a more just, green, and beautiful world. So I love partnerships. I totally believe in them. And then this, wanting to transform the world through partnerships. So I've held very closely to that. Yesterday, I was actually with one of our organization's secretary that was with us, the company treasurer from when we first started the organization. And it's been such a tremendous, tumultuous journey. And I just said to her, Lena said to me, she's like, Sarah, I would have quit a long time ago. And I said, not once in this 7-year journey have I had one idea of quitting. I have not doubted once. And I think when you lead with that conviction, it's amazing. The team, especially when you've hired the right team, that really can capture and believe in your vision and motivate. I could have very easily lost colleagues in the last kind of 6 months because of what happened, but they chose to stay. And one of them very clearly expressed that. So we chose to stay because we believe in your vision. So if I was to define my leadership style as well, it would be around a visionary leadership. And I think it's because of that conviction and holding, kind of stewarding this idea that is it's so in me, you know, and I want to share that with others and my team. I've actually had to learn a little bit, Christine, how to be a boss.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I'm a leader, but sometimes you have to be the boss. And so that's also been a very interesting journey.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes it might be too familiar because it's such a raw journey. There's a closeness that comes with the team and a real familiar thing, but sometimes you need to be that boss and there needs to be that hierarchy. So I've also, particularly in the last months, have recognized to step into that role. I don't have to always stay there, but to be the boss lady sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a fantastic distinction because a lot of times in more social enterprises, when people are doing sustainability, regenerative, syntropic type of initiatives, there is a general tendency towards consensus-driven, non-hierarchical, etc. And so sometimes the coaching and the training is around how to take the authority when needed. But there's a very big difference between holding, and it still comes back to stewardship, holding the space for a purpose and a vision to come to life and taking authority for that. Because in the syntropic world, we speak about the steward of the source idea and its pattern integrity. And so they're the sort of the carriers of the exquisite integrity of the idea they're bringing to life, which can manifest in 1,000 different forms, but you have to be able to see the integrity in whatever form it manifests. And so that's not always able to be transmitted, and people don't always get the right idea. And so the opportunity to step in and say, I love the creativity of your idea. It's not holding the pattern integrity of what we're doing, and then when it comes to people, relationships and so on, asking people to step up because, they really want to and they want to be able to bring their best. Mm-hmm. So that the ability to step into a more authoritative voice in distinction to dominate over and remove the possibility and potential for people to be incredibly creative and synergistic. Sometimes that is the necessary training, because for many people, stewardship, holding a space, is the easier version than the authoritarian one, whereas, and it's not one or the other. In a syntropic sort of enterprise, the requirement for the authoritative stand should be minimal. But if it's necessary, we don't fear doing it because we're fiercely stewarding the idea that we're bringing to life. Yeah.
Yeah, this really landed for me in the last 6 months because I think with stewardship comes immense responsibility.
Yeah.
And it's also responsibility for your organization with the grittier tasks. Like administration. Okay, we get some people that are strong with administration. I'm not. But if I am the steward of my organization, which of course I am as the steward leader, I am responsible. And so to put those shoes on, to put those shoes on and to take that responsibility. And that's the responsibility to know when you need to nurture and be the steward leader, and the responsibility to know when you need to put your boss lady jacket on and march into the office,
Yeah. That's beautiful. So, and it's been just a privilege from my point of view to be watching you evolve and emerge and grow into this role, and just the beauty and graciousness that you bring as a human being, really quite extraordinary. Sarah, it's always a treat to hang around, and I do so hope that we get to meet in person at some stage. So tell me,
I really hope so.
So if people want to engage or read more about or participate in any way or learn more about what you're doing, is there a methodology for that or a way of engaging with your work?
Yeah, perhaps what could be good is you can reach out through our website. That's the KilimanjaroProject.org. I'm sure we can put a link in the bio.
Yeah.
And then, and if people want to reach out to me personally, my email address is Sarah, SARAH, at the KilimanjaroProject.org.
All right.
So I'd be happy to engage with people. We've got all sorts of exciting things happening this year, real opportunities for people to engage with our work, both locally and internationally.
Oh, beautiful. And so finally, is there any question or any topic that I haven't raised that you would love to speak to before we close?
Maybe a question, and it's an open-ended question for the listeners as well as you. And I think it's this consideration that as we go through our lives that we should ask is, what is enough? Because this is a question that actually led me in a way to where I am now, ties into that provisioning. But as a planet, as a world, what do we consider enough for our personal consumption, for our community and collective consumption? Let's say, what is enough? And let's start to practice that.
And would you include things like what is enough love? What is enough time? What is enough? Would you include those things as well in that question? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's great. Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good one. What is enough food? What is enough food?
Yeah.
Christine, I think with love though, it's like there's a never ending well. Love is one of the things that just keeps on giving. It just flows and flows and flows.
Yeah. I think there's a distinction though between feeling like there is not enough love and feeling that you have plenty of love, and it's not that you need more, but more is okay.
Yeah, more is okay.
Yeah. All right.
It's such a treat, Christine, and wonderful to connect again.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Really great. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks, Christine.
This episode is produced by Foundation Novidium. We thank them for their wonderful production. If you are curious to learn more about Syntropic World, then please visit syntropic.world and sign up for our weekly Sunday Syntropy, where you will receive articles, tools, and resources to support your syntropic journey. You can also find us on all the socials at Syntropic World. We love questions. Please ask. You can email us at hello@syntropic.world. Let's leave everything better and be syntropic. Thank you for listening.